I mean, I'm asking Ian how he's going to get his mellow, and he's like, sit. I'm like, but I got to get on the side.
We're having production difficulties today.
Flying down from the heavens, here we are again, eternally born. Hey, how you doing today, everybody? This is Charles, and once again, we're in a wonderful episode of Eternally Bored. I'm joined with my co-host, Trey Chambers, and of course, our producer, cameraman, everything behind the scenes, Ian Failing. How are y'all doing today?
Woo! Although it sounds like Charles is trying to be our composer.
Am I?
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like you're looking for an intro song. I think you're getting close. That was pretty good.
And a dog catcher, so if he's distracted, there's a reason.
We have a mascot today, a dog, so if you hear barking...
Are you going to edit it out? I think so. You'll have a chance.
I may or may not. It depends on how cute it is. Alright, so today on Eternally Bored, we're talking about color blindness mainly, although I'll talk a little bit about some experiences I've had with other disabilities and gaming, but primarily colorblind, and I'm the test subject because I am colorblind.
Patience zero.
as I've already ranted on the show several times before.
He actually does have a disability. You just can't see it.
Wow. Alright. It's going to be like that. So, rant number one. The problem with being colorblind is that people don't take it seriously as a disability, so you just get teased for it. Would you tease any other handicapped person? No. But, colorblindness is like, ha ha, funny, hilarious. So anyway, that's what we're talking about today. We're also going to talk about new games. We have played Pandemic Legacy Season 2. We haven't finished it, but we're several games in, so we'll talk about our experiences with that. And some other games that we have been playing, including Clans of Caledonia. So, let's go ahead and get started on the topic du jour. So, games for the colorblind. So, what I wrote is, with roughly 8% of the population having some form of color impairment, why are so many games still not colorblind friendly? And Charles, who's worked in the print industry, has some interesting theories on that. Would you like to share them?
It's purely a cost thing. So, basically, for those who work in the print industry, you know that everything is sort of like cyan, yellow, and blue. Those are the three main colors, or magenta, sorry. Yeah. Magenta, whatever they want to call it at the moment. But basically, it's going to be red, yellow, and blue are the three components of ink. Those, when you're printing, come at like a 1-to-1 ratio. The other colors that are easiest to make are the ones that directly combine those colors, so sort of like half and half. So you got yellow and blue making whatever shade of green, depending upon the tint of the red. You have your red and blue making the violet, and you have, red and yellow making orange. So you have, or an orange of some type. So you have these things that are very cheap, and when these 6 colors, when you're doing massive print runs, you're dealing with a lot of things depending upon how much ink you have, but you really want to not go into anything extravagant, especially if you're doing something on a smaller scale. So if you can print within those basic 6 colors, it makes it a lot cheaper. You don't, especially on the massive print runs, because unfortunately ink, they might have gigantic vats, but you can't really get that when you're doing like printing. Now, I haven't done any board game printing per se, but I do a lot. I've worked in the print industry for like trials in the legal industry for a long time, and this is something we run into problems with because it's like you keep on reordering. If someone has a particular company graphic that has utilized the same color all the time, you keep on running out of that color in a larger quantity than you do any of the others. So you're constantly on a reorder, and black as well. So
yeah, and in a different dimension, it's obviously just a privilege thing. Like a lot of people, like me, who's normally sighted, if I was designing a board game, if I was designing the graphics for a board game, I just wouldn't even think about trying to include people who might have trouble seeing things in the same way that, I don't know, someone like you who has other kinds of experiences might.
Yeah, and we fundamentally see differently, right? Because what are your favorite colors to look at?
Blue. Yeah, blue's my favorite. I always play with blue because it stands out. It rarely blends with something, and if it does blend with something, it's purple. But purple is not as commonly used as green and red as player colors. So if I can't play with red or green because the overlap would be just terrible. And if someone else calls blue, I usually play with yellow because yellow also tends to stand out. It's not really going to mix with anything unless there's like a really light shade of orange in the game. Then sometimes that could be a problem. But normally blue because it stands out. Now the problem is sometimes if there's purple and it's a bluer shade of purple instead of more on the red spectrum, then I'll even get blue confused. So it's hard. It's a hard life being a colorblind board gamer, and it's made harder by the fact that publishers don't really cater to us a lot of the time. Even though it's about 7% of males and less than 1% of females, but because the board game industry is still dominated by men, fortunately, it's evening out. But there's going to be a higher instance of colorblindness because it skews towards our gender. So there's been even some recent examples. I picked out Yamatai and Century Spice Road, which I've already ranted about on this podcast. I'm not going to spend too much time, but both of these games not only use red and green, which tons of games do, but they throw in brown. So it's like I have a red problem, I have a green problem, and on top of that they layer on brown. So I don't even know like what the heck is going on. Both of those games, I just looked at them and was like, y'all are going to have to help me play. And they literally had to help me play almost every single turn because I'm like, what color is this? What color is this? I literally have no idea. And it was terrible. And I think actually Century Spice Road was the worst of the two because they also put cube graphics. Like, in a way, they could have helped themselves a little bit by using, like, the graphics of the spices instead of just putting generic cubes. They put generic cubes instead on the cards themselves, and so even those were hard to tell apart. So not only could I not tell the components of the game apart, I couldn't tell the graphics apart, when they could have easily used icons and saved themselves at least a little of trouble. But
yeah. And I remember Yamatai, you were able to partially play it, but you can't implement any of like the long-term strategy because you might you're secretly thinking about what you want to do, but then you find out that that's all based on having an erroneous color of both that's available to you. So now people are seeing your thought process and automatically have a heads up on you strategically.
Sometimes people will be gracious and will let me undo a move because I'm like, I thought that was green, and then but sometimes it's like too far gone. Like it's like I planned this move 20 turns in advance, and now I've come to the fruition of my strategy, but the whole time I was thinking I had the colors backwards in my mind, and so like there's no way to do it. That happened to me a couple times in Yamatai where I was like planning to do a certain move, and then by the time I got time to execute my plan, I couldn't do it because I had the wrong colored boats.
I remember there was a game or two where we had actually like rearranged the locations of the resources to make them like upper left, upper right, lower left, lower right resources for you, because then they were different things and not just the regular.
Yeah.
There's a way for people who are normally sighted to more clearly empathize with that kind of problem. There's an app that I was just randomly reading on Reddit one time, and someone had mentioned an app called CV Simulator for Color Vision Simulator that some Japanese medical and human computer interaction researcher had developed that actually lets you see the world as someone who had one of the varieties of color blindness. There's 3 different sub-varieties depending upon whatever genetic change is happening. But it's really an amazing app. You can just click it and see what the world's like when you're colorblind. And it's a completely different experience. It's a different way to see things. It's much more shocking to actually see the fact that you can't see the 2 colors than to hear about what it's like to not see the 2 colors. And
now, one of the things that I've noticed is the games that are most colorblind friendly, to me, appear extremely bland in terms of their design. I don't know, like, they will pop out the tray, but they will, on the other hand, just look like, all right, this is all sort of a muted brownish black type of color. I guess one good example for me, and I don't know if you remember when we played this a few years ago, was Coal Baron. And Coal Baron is basically you simulate going down in the mine shaft, and it goes from like a light yellow to a darker orange to a darker gray to a black, and the whole game is in terms as you're going down the shaft, and the whole game is sort of in that color. Even the sunrise is sort of like a muted sunset, so it was like a dark orange overtone and stuff. And I remember you remarked at the time that it was like, oh yeah, I see everything.
Yeah, no problems there. And part of the reason it's not just the money thing. Another reason why companies use red and green is because people like red and green, and so those are 2 of the most popular colors for players to choose as their player color. So one of the things I suggest to publishers, and there's a whole bunch of suggestions I'm going to make at the end of this segment, but one of the things I suggest to them is just use one of the two, right? Like just use red or just use green, and use one maybe for a resource. Like maybe there's a green resource in the game and a red player color. So your game has both red and green in it, which people like, but they're separate kinds of things, so that there's no way I'm going to confuse them, because the player pieces will be different shapes or whatever than the resources.
Yeah, that's similar to, there's a method in developing character art or graphic art, which is you'll develop the shape of the things first in black and white without colors. That makes you more easily to be able to distinguish between one kind of thing and another without the colors at all, because even for people who are fully sighted, it still makes them more visually distinct, to have a better outline, a better shape, better shadow, whatnot. It's better to have two different icons for two different resources, even if they're different kinds of resources, rather than to have a blue cube, a red cube, a yellow cube, etc.
Is that the technical term for people without colorblindness? Fully sighted? Or you're just guessing? I was like, I've never heard that, but that sounds like a good name for
Dr. Phelan, MD.
Yeah, so what, in general, I've already shared a little bit about my experiences, but what have y'all's experiences been with people, even besides myself? Because I know there's a lot, for whatever reason, there's a lot of colorblind people in our gaming group. I don't know if that's just like random chance, or if there's something about like colorblind people that are drawn to board games. I don't know how the demographics overlap there, but for whatever reason, it's way more than 8%.
I don't really know, because like I said, it's not a visible, obvious disability. So those of us who are normally sighted don't think about it unless someone raises it as a point, which obviously is not a big topic of conversation. Being like, I can't do this thing.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it depends on the game, because, for instance, Terra Mystica was very popular, and Terra Mystica, I mean, you look at the board and you're like, okay, well, these colors look sort of, sorry, he has a board of Terra Mystica on his wall,
I like that
mainly
game.
because it's there, so I couldn't help myself but to look at it. But when you look at the colors of Terra Mystica, they sort of overlap, but in general, people who don't really have many color problems, because at least they know that none of these colors are going to be adjacent to each other on a normal basis, right?
And also, they're like different textures. Like they use different graphics in the little hexes. Now, what is a problem in Terra Mystica is they do use green, red, and brown. However, they were, at least in the printing that I own, they were better at choosing the tones. So they're very different tones. Like the brown is kind of dark. It's way darker than the green. The red is kind of medium, and the green is actually a very light green. So I have no problems with that. But I have seen a printing of Terra Mystica that I think was the first printing, because I think I have the second. The first printing, the green and the red are like indistinguishable for me. And so if I ever sit down and I play someone's copy of first edition, I'm like, I'm sorry guys, like you're gonna have to help me, because I don't know who this is, and I'll just pick another race, not for any strategic reason, just because I don't want to deal with the red-green problem in this game.
Yeah. Or do something like, I mean, in that particular game, you can always like technically have enough terrain to like cover the same color, so at least a little dimensional. But that's sort of
that does help.
That is extreme.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I wanted to also mention or talk about do you think board gaming in general is good for people with disabilities? Is it a good choice of hobby, or is there just too many obstacles in the hobby that are like insurmountable for people with disabilities? What do y'all think?
I think it's a great way, because it's very mental. So obviously vision disabilities in a game where you have to be able to see is pretty severe. I mean, as someone who is blind is going to have a real problem playing most board games. I'm not like I haven't met a blind gamer, so I don't know. I'm terribly unable to empathize with how you'd be able to play most board games, especially because they don't have any kind of accessibility features like Braille or whatnot, and a lot of tokens are the same shape in general.
There was actually a company that was making Braille games they did it for a long time. I don't know if they're still in business or if they just stopped or whatever, but I remember seeing them or hearing them advertise on the Dice Tower podcast, which I thought was really cool. I don't know if it was like I don't know how many blind board gamers there are, so it might not have been a feasible business to have, but I thought that was really cool of them that they were at least trying to, like, even, because that's one group that I'd be like, oh, there's no way that they could ever play board games, but this company was trying to get even blind people. Yeah.
Well, chess. has actually always been like the
Yeah.
the traditional game of the blind, because they have always made, at least as long as I've been alive, they've always had like blind chess boards, and in and of itself individually carved chessmen. That's part of the reason why, because you can just feel the tops of them, and it's easier to visualize. So I do know, like, and I also know that there's a good number of or not video gamers, but there are systems that people have tried to program for the blind where they're like sort of bring in. But yes, you're all right. When terms blind is probably the most difficult, but
Yeah.
definitely many of the other disabilities are great. Like if you have any sort of movement disability, or amputations or things of this nature, I've seen all types of people at the game group successfully just
Yeah.
work around it, because they can see and they can literally just tell people what they need to do, or just do it themselves, because it's so easy. I mean, I've
Yeah.
seen people who just could not stop shaking, but they're able to play board games pretty well. I mean, because they're just focused on one thing, and it sort of helps with the finer motor skills. So in general, I think it's excellent.
Yeah.
And we don't like dexterity games anyway.
Yes, obviously not.
That's not
for
true.
every.
You'll see Jingo right behind me.
Yeah, not every dexterity game is for that, but something. There's many other games out there, like Avalon. Godly.
Yeah, anyone can play. The blind can play Avalon.
The blind can play Avalon. There you go. There's a game that anyone can play. Can you shout at me? Sure.
If someone was mute, they'd have trouble playing, or they could work it to their advantage. Actually.
Really? As many? I would just flip the finger at everybody. I'd sign language in incessantly. Actually, yeah.
I hope this isn't offensive, but I might be better at Avalon if I couldn't speak.
You're not the only one. Yeah, so yeah, I agree with Charles. I think in general it's a great hobby for the disabled, because for pretty much all disabilities, I think there's a way to work around it. The blind being one case where you can make some games, especially abstracts, that have different pieces. Like Hive would be another one, because Hive, like the pieces are engraved, so you can actually feel the lines. So a lot of the abstracts, I think, would be totally playable by the blind. But yeah, so in general, I think it's a great hobby. So one of the other bonuses of our hobby is that it's great for that. All right, so I wanted to talk about, from a colorblind person, the 3 suggestions that I would make to publishers, how to make your games more friendly to the colorblind. If a publisher happens to be listening, or if you know a publisher, you can share this with them. But my number 3 would be shapes, and the reason why it's my number 3 and not higher is because there are some games that rely on shapes to solve this problem, and the shapes are too similar. So that's one of those things that, like, their intentions are good. They're like, oh, we'll make it different shapes, and that way we can avoid all colorblind issues. Yeah, that's great, but if the shapes are too similar, then you're still running into a problem. So as long as the shapes are very distinct, and they're also large enough, because it could be distinct shapes, but the pieces are so small, it doesn't matter they're distinct shapes if it's very small pieces.
Oh yeah, small hexagon, small octagon. Can you not see the difference?
Yeah, that recalls what I was saying earlier. It's a thing in graphic design to take a picture of the game that you're trying to design and change the filter to black and white and look at it and see if it's any worse for you to play in black and white. Even for people who are fully sighted, it still makes the game more you're able to see it better if things have different shapes and they're more visually distinct even without colors.
Right, exactly. So that would be my number 3. My number 2 would be icons. Good iconography stands out. It's I think less often I see icons that are indistinguishable than like shapes. Like shapes, little pieces on a map, they're very often too similar for me to tell apart. But like icons, as long as your graphic designer knows what they're doing, they can make distinct icons, and I can tell the difference between the 2 things. Now, color can be a problem here too. Like a lot of games use red and green colored icons. It's like, okay, again, please just pick one of those 2. All right, like Race for the Galaxy, I get so mad because that game uses green and red and brown.
In addition, it's icons gone wild. That's
Yeah.
why I get mad at Race for the Galaxy. I'm like, do I
it is-
really need an icon for this? Can you not just spell it out on the damn card, please?
It's an icon-based game, and they chose, of the 5 colors to use, they chose red, green, and brown. It's like, why? Why? So that's really annoying. So as long as you use distinct icons and you don't use both red and green, then I think icons is a great way to solve it. And then my favorite is something the video game industry has really been using a lot lately, which is not using red and green. And if they do use it in the same game, they'll put a colorblind friendly mode. You can actually click an option in the colorblind or in the options of the video game, and it'll change one of the colors to usually yellow. So you'll have like blue and yellow instead of blue and red, because a lot of times they'll use blue and red for the two sides in a game, and the red will blend in with all kinds of stuff. And then you'll switch in colorblind mode, and it'll be blue and yellow are the two teams now. So that is really helpful. So what I would just tell companies is don't use red and green. Use one or the other. There's really cool things you can do with alternate colors. Like I love playing games that have like white or black as color options, or pink, or a distinguished shade of purple that doesn't blend in with the blue, or there's lots of different colors, and I like unique colors. That's my favorite solution. It's just don't use the same blue, red, green, yellow that every game uses. Mix it up. Throw some other different colors in there. So, yeah.
Purple, yes.
And lots of people love purple, so yeah.
People love purple.
Royal. Use purple as a player color. I think that's a great idea. All right, well, let's go ahead and talk about new games. I have tons of new games to discuss. Let's kick it off with probably the highlight people want to hear most is about Pandemic Legacy Season 2, which we've all played. So let's go through each of our impressions. Start with Charles. What do you think of the Season 2 so far? We're 3 games in, by the way.
Oh, and the prologue.
No spoilers.
Yeah.
And the prologue.
So 4 games in, technically. Yeah, this will be no spoilers, don't worry.
All right. I got 2 things to say. One, I really miss my old team.
Well, I hate you too, Charles.
Fine. Y'all can hate me as much as you want, but I'm sorry. It's just the difficulty of playing with cats. We play with one cat who just wants to go his own way, and one cat who just wants to watch the world burn.
Okay.
And then there's me and Trey. But as far as the game goes,
the biggest distraction was your dog, not the cats.
No, our biggest distraction was the human cat who was hosting. But anyways, moving on. The game itself, I think it looks to be a very good restart of the series. I mean, not to spoil anything, it takes place, I want to say like 73 years after the original. Mm-hmm. And I think that they've come up with something new. It plays similar, but definitely different. People
it's not what we play.
Yeah.
Yeah, they did not rehash. I'd give them credit for that. They didn't just slap on a new coat of paint and be like, here, 2.0, go ahead.
Yeah.
Give us $70 more
or whatever, $100 in SRP. But yeah, it really, if you want to take it is almost like its own new system. And I've thought recently that all of Pandemic has been doing a very good job at recreating itself with like the Pandemic Iberia, Pandemic Cthulhu, these point and click sort of small set box games, and then
the dice game's actually pretty good too. The Cure.
Yeah, the Cure. And now you have Season 2, which has basically reinvented itself a bit from Season 1, but it's still very familiar. I almost would say it's like Pandemic in reverse, right?
It is still fully social, which has all of the positives and negatives of co-op games. So, like, if it still can have the alpha player problem, if somebody wants to run the game and 3 other people wants to sit there and watch the game happen, then that can definitely happen. But then again, on the other hand, it allows the possibility of almost a negotiation or like a more social, conversational play style, rather than you playing yourself, trying to beat everyone else around you. You're playing the game with other people, which is one of the things that I feel like sets this game apart.
Yeah. It is a group puzzle, which to me it's a plus and a minus. Like it encourages interactivity, but at the same time, I like having like my own plans. Not to bring up Spirit Island again, but that game is so complex you can't play other people's turns for them because you have a million of your own things to think about. Whereas Pandemic, all versions of Pandemic are so simple that the whole team can just kind of like collaborate on each other's moves. It also has no simultaneous phase like Spirit Island has a phase, the main phase of the game, where everybody makes their decisions is simultaneous, so everybody's doing their own thing. Pandemic, it's like, oh, it's my turn. But the other 3 people have nothing else to do but help you take your turn. So they're going to help you take your turn and make suggestions, whether you agree or not, and then the bickering ensues. So
it's my favorite part of the game. That's why Hanob is my favorite game, it's the bickering.
Yeah.
But
big bickering game.
But because of that, I mean, I think one of the things with Spirit Island is that you get so lost in your turn. It's A, easy to mess up what you're doing on your turn, and B, you're just sort of throwing out things to try to fit. You're like saying, I got this. Does anyone need it? Or I really need this. Can anyone give it to me?
Yeah.
And that's it. No one knows your ultimate overall plan. So sometimes you just get creamed because you're not able to get rid of enough people at the same time in Spirit Island. And in Pandemic Legacy, I mean, you're basically just praying the epidemic doesn't come up. And I mean, that's the one thing about Pandemic. It's just like, all right, are the cards going to go my way?
Screwed by the card draws.
Yeah.
Which is something that we seem to like, because there is highly variable games have more replayability and more interest at the downside of just having to take that to the entire team thing sometimes, like Terraforming Mars. We seem to like playing that game once in a while.
As long as we draft.
Yeah. Well, there's no drafting the epidemic cards in Pandemic, unfortunately. It's like, there's 2 times already in the campaign where, like, the exact wrong card came up at the exact wrong time and did a lot of damage to us, but that's Pandemic. That's the name of the game. So you can't really prepare for every bad eventuality. For me, I would say, for some reason, I didn't find it as compelling as Season 1 so far, but again, we're only 3 games in, so I'm expecting like the big major things to happen in the coming months. And actually, I heard something big happens in April. I have no idea what, but I guess we'll find out soon, because that's our next game, if we can get past March. Yeah.
Our 2-2 record is sad.
No, 2-1, man. We only lost 1.
We lost
Oh,
the
you're counting the
prologue.
prologue.
Yes.
The prologue doesn't matter.
We lost prologue. Anyways.
The prologue is really hard.
If we
by the
learned
way.
anything from the first game, it's don't get a perfect record.
Yeah. So, yeah, mechanically, I don't know. It didn't entice me as much, but I found that afterwards, like, I've been thinking about it all week. Like what upgrades are we gonna pick? Where are we gonna explore next? So that's a sign that it's still a good game.
That's
even
phrase
though
life right there.
it wasn't pulling me in as much when we were sitting at the table, but it kept pulling at me through the rest of the week. It's like, how are we gonna tackle these problems? And so, yeah, very compelling game is my final verdict so far. So
I'll play it at least 8 more times.
At least 8, probably more. All right, so new games. I guess I'll start. I played Unlock the Elite, which is like the introduction to Unlock. It only lasts like 20 minutes or something like that, whereas normal Unlock games take 60 minutes. But this one you actually buy from BGG. It only costs like $5, and it's just literally a small deck of cards. But it was so much fun. I can't wait to play the rest of the series. I actually like it better than the Exit series for 2 reasons. One, so Exit is just point-based. These are escape room games, by the way. I should have said that from the beginning. But these are escape room style games, so everybody's like sitting at a table solving puzzles. In Exit, you destroy pieces, so you can't resell it, and I'm big into reselling games. You got to recoup your money. So you can't resell Exit, but it's not very expensive. It's like $11, not a big deal. But that's still a negative. And 2, it's a point-based system, so like we're timing ourselves. We're trying to get it with under an hour, because you have to finish everything in under an hour with no hints to win Exit with a perfect score. But Unlock doesn't even give you that option. Unlock, you start a timer, you have an hour to solve it, and if you don't, you lose, and that's it. And I like being under the gun. Like, that extra pressure and extra tension really made it a lot of fun. So I like that. I also like the puzzles. The puzzles in Unlock are more like a video game. It's more like you're playing a point-and-click adventure, going to different rooms, exploring different rooms, finding items, combining those items. And I really love those adventure games for computer. And it really gave me that feeling. Whereas Exit is more like an abstract. It's like, here's some abstract puzzles. Figure out how they all go together, and yeah.
Exit is more like you're really in an escape room. You might see these props, and we just took it straight from there and put it on, but now you have it in paper instead.
Yeah, so I think I like Unlock better, even though I've only played the introduction, but I plan to buy them all and play them all, because I had a ton of fun. Ian, you want to talk about one of your games?
Well, I mean, you talk about the downsides of Exit. There are some of our players who really didn't like some of the aspects of it, but that's spoilerish, so...
Yeah, we played one of the Exit boxes that had a puzzle that we didn't think was fair, because it didn't give us any indication that we could solve it.
And then they
damn you, dirty ape!
And then they reused it in a way that was less bad.
Yeah, when we played a different version of Exit, they did the same type of puzzle, but they explicitly told us, like, hey, you can do this. It's like, okay, that's fair. In this other box, and if we had played it in the other order, if we had done the one that told us we could do it first, it wouldn't have been unfair, but, that's just...
Trying not to do any spoilers. The original time might as well have been, you could phone a friend, but we're not going to tell you that you could phone a friend.
Exactly. Unlock might have similar problems, but, I guess I'll report back when I find out.
My favorite new game is probably Lisboa. All right. So, if you enjoyed the designers, I'm terrible with names. The designer
Vidal Lacerda.
Thank you.
Vidal
Vidal
Lacerda.
Lacerda. If you enjoyed his other games,
CO2.
Vinhos and Kanban, right?
Vinhos,
CO2.
Kanban, CO2, and the Gallerist.
If you like those
Gallerist.
super heavy, like multiple mini games combined into a main game, have to figure out 3 strategies at once and play them all at the same time, super heavy Euro, then you'll probably like Lisboa. I liked it so much after playing the first game that I bought the deluxe edition and played it a couple of times.
He's since played it every day at the board game group for and taught new people. So 5 hours, 4 or 5 hours
Per game.
per game, every game.
But yeah, also it has beautiful art if you like that kind of thing in a board game. But yeah, you have to definitely take fiddliness and like square it into another dimension to have multiple games going on at once, and you'll like that.
There's no colorblind problem because everything is blue in Lisboa. Literally everything is blue.
Yeah, I found the game to be rather muted, but
my whole thing, his games are all the same to me. Like, I'm really engaged because they're really interesting systems, but after I played them like 3 times, I'm like, I don't really need to play this game because they never had that replayability. I don't know if Lisboa is going to be the same way. I need to play it, 2 more times to find out. But like after I played, Kanban a couple times, I was like, I'm kind of don't really have the desire to play it again. Same thing with Gallerist. So I don't know, but I really like his systems. They're really interesting. I just don't know if they're compelling.
I feel like Lisboa is a little bit less algorithmic and a little bit more fluid and open sandbox. So hopefully you like it more. We'll see.
Yeah.
With me, I feel very similar to you, Trey. It's like unless I really love the theme of the Lacerda game, I will not want to replay it again.
You don't want to rebuild Portugal?
I also want to give credit to Lacerda for representing his country nonstop. But yeah, like I said, I've looked at a few, I've played a couple, and probably Kanban is the only one that I sort of want to replay, and I have it, and I don't, they just re-released a driver's edition of it, and I had no excitement to get rid of my old game because I don't play it enough. And I'm like, all right.
I've thought about buying Vinhos because that's a theme that I can get into, some wine, but I don't know how often it would hit the table, and I don't even know if I want to keep playing it. I played it once. My problem with that game is like you literally play it for 3 hours and you make 12 decisions. You have 12 actions in the entire game of Vinhos.
His games are on like the war game end of your games. Like you have to dedicate the entire evening to playing this with your friends, especially if you explain it.
Yeah. However, I will say Lacerda's a good designer. His games aren't necessarily for me and Trey, but they are definitely for Ian. So if you have played one, you will probably like the other.
Definitely check him out. His games are very cool. Charles, what do you got?
Let's see. Well, I'm going to go ahead and utilize. I want to talk about Clans of Caledonia, but I want to talk about Not Alone.
Do we all have that on our list?
Yeah, I don't have Clans. I didn't play Clans, but we can talk about Not Alone.
We all have Not Alone on our list. I bought a group of games, and the one that I got for $9.99 was literally the best on sale at the daily special, and that would be Not Alone.
It's worth more than $9.99.
It is. It is. Yeah. It's worth its full $24.99 MSRP price. 2 things about this game. It is basically hide and seek in a box. It plays 7 players, where it's 1 player against 6. So it's up to 6. It is very good at its 7-player count.
It's hard to do. Which
is really hard to do. It's also good at its 5 and its 6 and its 4-player count, which is very hard to do. So if you're looking for a game that plays 4 to 7 easily, and it doesn't have like everyone sort of takes simultaneous team-based actions. So basically, there's 4 rounds where first the team of the hunted will decide where they want to go. They can either have heavy discussions or completely do it randomly, depending upon the group in the game. Then the hunter or the predator, I can't remember what it is, he'll basically go and pick where he goes, and you flip the cards up, see who gets caught, see who doesn't, and rinse and repeat until someone makes it to the escape pod first, either the creature or the hunted, and it just works wonderfully.
Yeah, just as an abstract, it feels like it bridges the gap between a filler and an actual game. Like a lot of fillers, I'll just be like, I'd just rather not play that, but this game is fun and plays a lot of people. It's good.
Yeah, no, I really enjoyed it as well. Surprisingly so. I was like, this looks like a chintzy game. It's not going to be great, but I actually really enjoyed it. So a lot of tension. It was fun to kind of like try to fake someone out. I felt the sides were fairly balanced.
But it is 1v-all, so don't choose a new player to be the one. Even if they want to, well, if they feel like losing, it's fine.
But I think the one has enough advantages that
Yeah.
you could put a new player there, and they'd have a decent chance.
As long as they have fun, not winning, it's good.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would honestly say this game it's a excellent game for, you have a bunch of people you need to split in the group for the purposes I get it for, which is to sort of facilitate a bunch of new players coming into a game group and giving them something they can easily play. It is extremely accessible. I'd absolutely recommend this to everybody.
For that price? Yep.
For that price.
All right. Next, I have Coin Quest, which is a blind bidding game that kind of flew under the radar. It came out like a year or two ago, and I remember seeing Tom Vasel's review, and that is like all I've ever heard of it, because very few people like blind bidding games, and that's the main reason. So this is it's also a bag building game. It came out kind of when bag building was all the rage, and like the first wave of bag building. Yeah, those first wave of bag builders were coming out, and it is a game I feel like someone played early on, or Hyperborea. And it was like that is exactly what I call that game, because that game is hyper boring. I feel like someone played a bag builder and was like, you know what, I'm gonna make a game out of this, and they made it in like the next day, and they play tested it for like a month. They showed it to a publisher, and it was innovative enough because it was still the first wave of bag builders that the publisher picked it up and published it, because it is like a very unrefined game. I'm not saying it's a bad game. There's definitely a game there, but it was not refined. It was not expounded upon. It's like the most bare bones, and there's very little interesting things about it. So I don't know. Even though it has that cool bag building aspect, I would recommend Revolution, which I think is still the best blind bidding game out there, especially because there's a variant you can play where you don't lose the things that you bid if you don't win the space, which I recommend playing Revolution with that, because then you don't get that bad feeling of, oh, I put all my chickens in one basket, but someone still had one more chicken than me and took it, and then I lost everything and got nothing. Like in Revolution, when you play with that variant, you will never lose. You will either gain something, or you'll get all your currency back so you can win stuff the next round. So I think that's a much better system. This game was just kind of like eh. And super abstract, like the most abstract, non-abstract game that I've probably ever played. So I can't really recommend it. Get Revolution instead if you're interested in blind bidding.
But don't play by the rules. I would say pass on Resolution.
I did say if you're interested in blind bidding. Not a lot of people are, but if you are, check out Revolution. Ian, what you got?
For me, one of the big new things I played recently is Anachrony, thanks to Jay. So need to bring him back for a discussion on Kickstarter games, because he is big on bringing in fresh meat, whether or not it's good or bad. But Anachrony, in my opinion, which might be controversial for some people, it's a good game, because I'm a sucker for novel mechanics, and the base mechanic in Anachrony is you're in a time-traveling competitive civilization amongst civilizations on a dying planet. So in order to win, it's kind of like an old sci-fi TV show from the 80s where you need to like work the time stream and like send back resources back in time, and in order to prevent there from being a temporal anomaly, you need to fix the things that you've caused to happen differently later in time. So it's kind of
it's a loan system.
Yeah, a loan system, worker placement, investment game, and just simply because of the way that system works differently from the usual Euro building system, I was hooked in the first of one games that I've played so far. I played a race that every one of my friends has had a difficulty playing, which makes it even more interesting to me, because it feels like I can beat this problem, but the problem is me, so I'll definitely be playing it again. But after one play, I'm definitely a fan of Anachrony.
So you played that game with Jay, huh?
How many rules did you get wrong? I played it.
We'll see second time we play it, we'll see how many rules we got
I
wrong.
played it a few months ago. I talked about it on this podcast. I liked it just like I like all of his games the first time I played them, but I don't know if I would continue to like it. This is the Tricarion designer.
Oh, okay.
He's like the put everything and the kitchen sink into the game. So there's like 20 different systems in Anachrony because we actually played with a bunch of expansions, and I don't know if you did, but
Yeah, Jay said we had to play with one expansion.
we played with all of them except one. So there was like
I don't know how that is.
yeah, there's like 5 different modules, and we played with like 4 of them, and it's already a complex game, and so. But I like complex games, so I didn't mind getting hit with all the extra complexity, and I genuinely enjoy the experience. I don't know if it's a game I'd purchase, probably not, because I don't think I'd play it more than once or twice a year, but still, it was an interesting game. I had fun.
That's why it's good to have a Kickstarter friend.
Exactly. Someone else.
I have nothing to say about that game, so I'll go straight into my my game. Me and the Tricarion designer. I'm sorry. All right, Fields of Green. So played another Stronghold game by Vangelis Borgo. I can't remember his full name right now, but basically it is sort of like the creator of Among the Stars have made a more simplified, streamlined Among the Stars and done what many Euro designers have done, bring it from space into a farm and making money doing that. It is, first of all, full disclaimer, this game takes up an inordinate amount of real estate.
That's saying a lot with a designer of... Never mind.
Yes. Just like Among the Stars.
It takes up more space in Argent than the Consortium,
yes.
if you play with enough players.
I don't know about that. I mean, Argent takes up a ton of space.
But towards the end of Fields of Green, you have these ridiculously huge farms in front of you.
Yes. Fields of Green, you will never worry about things being too small. The pieces are actually very simple in what they do. Basically, everyone is dealt a hand of cards, and you pick one. Or sorry, everyone gets to build their deck from a hand of 4 different types of cards. Then you draw up to 6 cards, and then you draft one, and then you pass it either to the left or right, depending upon the round. And then you build it, or build one of the other auxiliary utility cards, which is one brings water, called the silo, and one stores your food. The silo stores your food, and the water tank brings water. Basically, in the game, you're building a gigantic farm and you're usually converting either meat or whatever type of vegetable or fruit that you're making into money, and using the money to buy buildings that give you victory points. And there's 4 different types of building. You're just sort of interacting this gigantic engine building system along the way. I played it twice. I really enjoy those types of games, but I'm also a person who loves suburbia, so I would recommend any city builder, farm builder to this game, but it's not for everybody.
Yeah, I didn't care for it. It's weird because it has all the ingredients that I like, because I like tableau building, I like farming games, I like...
Tell us about it.
Right? I like engine building, I like drafting, I like spatial puzzles, and it has all of that, and yet, I don't know, it just didn't grab me. I don't know what it was. I can't put my finger on why. It's not like I disliked the game, but it just left me very dry. Like, I was not interested in the game. Nothing, like, hooked me, and I'm not exactly sure why that is, but, I don't know. I have nothing more to add, because I cannot figure out why I didn't care for this game.
I haven't played it.
Yeah, so, I will say, I had a funny thought when Charles was talking about the footprint. How many people went Among the Stars and this game, when they first came out, bought it at a con, took it to their hotel, and they're like, oh yeah, we can play this game tonight. And you know, like, they have those little small hotel desks that are like, 3 feet wide, and they have like 3 or 4 people in the room. And they're like, oh yeah, it's just this little card game. We'll just play it on this hotel table. It'll be fine. And then, like, 2 turns into the game,
end up on the bed.
Yeah, it's like, no, we cannot play this game. It is impossible. Or someone has to sit on the bed and pick up their whole farm, take a picture of their phone, and rebuild their farm on their bed, because you cannot play it on a small table. It is ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, the pieces are roughly 2.5 sides. The squares in that are roughly take up the same space as like 2.5 squares, X's in Suburbia, which is sort of ridiculous.
Yeah,
they do the basics the same.
They're like twice the size of Carcassonne tiles, put it that way.
I think there's 4. I think you could fit 4 Carcassonne tiles on one of those cards.
You might be right.
But they do, like, they're very simple, but they're just huge for no reason.
Yeah.
But I do like the size of it. I like the tableau space and stuff. So.
Yeah. All right, my next thing, I combined 2 entries, Supercard Buddy Fight and Dragobone. These are both Magic knockoffs. The only reason I played them is because I'm game design consulting. I'm trying to help a new designer, and he's like, well, these are the games that inspire me, so he wanted me to play them, and so I could take away. His game is already better than both of these games, because these games are just like, they're just derivatives off of Magic, and there's like nothing interesting, so I would not recommend them. But what I found interesting is that I looked them up on BGG, and even though these games, you know, they've sold probably thousands of units, only like a few BGGers have rated them, and it just kind of reinforced, like, BGG has a Magic entry, and it has a small Magic community, but like the Magic community still, like, there's a huge gulf between like the tradable card game, the TCG crowd,
CCG,
and the board gamer crowd, and there is some overlap, but it's very small. Like, I feel like if this was like a Magic website, people would know about these games and would have heard about them. They would be comparing them with Magic, but like, I've never heard a board gamer talk about either of these games, and they had hardly any ratings on BGG despite being released quite some time ago. So I don't know, I just found it interesting, but I'm not recommending these games. Just stick with Magic or play Hearthstone instead. It's a lot easier to get into.
Play Gwent.
Or Gwent, yeah.
Yes, Gwent is actually...
Tell us about it, Giles.
Whatever, man. Gwent
World's biggest Gwent fan, right here.
Whatever, it is Condottieri, which is a board game.
I like Condottieri better. I've played Gwent. I think Condottieri did it better, but personal opinion.
Well, the original Gwent inside The Witcher 3 is almost pure Condottieri.
Really?
Yes.
And the guy claims he was not inspired by Condottieri, apparently.
He lies.
Sure. Okay.
I have a card that makes... It's a weather card, it's winter, and it makes all your units go down to 1 strength. Oh, okay.
That sounds exactly like a card from
Condottieri.
Condottieri.
That is the winter card in Condottieri, so whatever.
Okay.
I don't want to talk about...
Alright.
Yeah.
Did you have any more?
We are running out of things. My last one is going to be Clans of Caledonia, which is probably Charles' big thing, because I played Charles' copy.
Go.
Y'all
you go
talk
first.
about it.
I played it with the wrong rules. Thanks, Charles.
Okay, full disclaimer. This was written on the player aid, and 4 people who did this action multiple times missed it on the player aid.
We trusted you.
You see this misdirection, throwing his own players under the bus?
No. And I sent the link out, but honestly, though, the game itself looks like it is going to be a very good... you can clearly tell it's inspired by Terra Mystica, and you can see some. I mean, they have largest area bonuses, but it's basically a fusion of Terra Mystica with Jumal Juju's game Green Deal, and I think the fusion is very good. I want to play it some more, but I enjoy like they made the terrain building more of a economic based system, so hexes cost between $1 and $6 to build upon. You have a number of different systems for like buying resources, selling resources, and that economic board replaces like the cult track. You have a number of orders that are coming up that are available to everyone to get, and sort of a race in that. So you can like go for your contracts, and that's one of the 8 actions. And I just, I just see a lot of potential in the game. Now, it does have Terra Mystica's number 1 flaw. I'm not sure if all the clans are balanced.
After we've played it 100 times, we can start bidding for races, just like Terra Mystica.
Exactly. That is actually a variant in the rule book, just like Terra Mystica.
We forgot to balance the game, so you can do it yourself.
And
that's a great way to put it.
I was talking to Jeremy, who actually knows one of the designers. He's like, they erred on the side of, instead of having a race that's too good and sort of weakening it, they tried to buff up the powers of the other clans, I should say.
Which means they might have overbuffed one.
Which they might have overbuffed one, or something of that nature. At the moment, I haven't played it enough times, but I'm definitely in the long haul. I'm going to play it another 20 or so to try to figure out what works best. And I like all the systems in the game. I think it's great.
I look forward to losing 20 more times to other players who have played 100 times as many games of Terra Mystica as have I.
Well, I just have one more game to talk about real quick. and that is Quicks. I finally got around to playing this game. I don't know, when did this game come out? Like 2 years ago, or is it an older game?
It has a Target exclusive, so it's probably like 4 years ago.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so it's just a filler. It's a die roller. It's like Yahtzee, but instead of rolling certain combinations, you're trying to roll certain numbers, and you're trying to mark them off your board, and the numbers you mark off are worth points, but you can't go backwards. Like some boards are ascending, some are descending. So if my board's like 1 to 12, once I mark off the 3, I can't go back and mark off the 1 or 2. And if another row is 12 to 1, if I mark off the 11, I can't go back and mark the 12. So it's a really super simple system, but it's still very engaging. And it's very, like, you can play with an unlimited number of players, because basically one person rolls a dice and then they make a decision, but all players get to make a decision based off of what they roll. So it's just a real quick, real interesting filler, and I don't know, I had a lot of fun, despite it being a super simple game.
Yeah, meant to select filler.
It's a pretty good take on a dice rolling filler.
Yeah, and I mean the deluxe version plays as boards for 8 reusable dry erase. That's the Target exclusive.
But if you have 8, I can play a filler.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Please do fours.
No, well, that's all I got. Y'all got anything else?
Well, in full disclosure, I do have one more thing, which is Catacombs Conquest.
Oh, did you get a chance to play it?
I did play Catacombs Conquest, which is different than all the other Catacombs I have sitting in the box at home. I don't own this copy of Catacombs because I didn't back it, because it shipped after the Catacombs 3rd edition. So it arrived. So
what is it, an expansion or a standalone?
It's a standalone game.
Oh.
So basically, they backed the 3rd edition of Catacombs. Then that hadn't shipped yet. They started another edition for Catacombs Conquest, and then that shipped before I got they started another Kickstarter for Catacombs Conquest, and then my friend got Catacombs Conquest before I got my Catacombs. So
All the best parts of Kickstarter.
everything in the Kickstarter. But I did play his copy, and I want to say it's still one of the better dungeon crawling dexterity games out there. I guess I should review every single Catacombs, but I don't know if it's really necessary, right?
Yeah, I mean, they're all similar systems from what I understand. But if you don't know, it's a disc flicking game, but like it's like a 4 versus 1 dungeon crawler, and but you're flicking pieces instead of rolling dice or using card combat. And you flick your disc and it does damage to whatever you hit, and you have like spells and special abilities and stuff. It's a really cool concept, and I really did enjoy it. But I actually like the 1st edition art better. I'm not into this like cartoony art as much with the newer editions, but I heard the newer editions have better rules, and I'm a mechanics guy, so I still want to try out the new versions because they're probably better games.
Well, Conquest it's a player versus player flicking game. So instead of 1v4, it's 1v1.
Is it only 2 player? Or
I think it's only 2 player.
No
2 player in teams. Two teams. But they basically, characters now have life points, so they don't go out of the game. If you have like an overall sort of like magic life point. So if your hero gets hit, it doesn't get eliminated. Instead, you lose life off your main, and then your hero comes back into the game board. So you'll always have them at your disposal. And at this point, I think Catacombs probably has 100 different heroes with 100 different combinations of powers, very much like the Exceed fighting system or a few of the other Brad Talton games. So there's a lot of replayability, and if you like any of the disc flicking games, I've always thought Catacombs is one of the best, and I think this continues the legacy.
Very cool. All right, well, I think that's going to do it for this episode of Eternally Bored. Please don't forget to like, share, subscribe. We're on YouTube and Twitter at eternallybored.com, no underscore, and that's board as in board games, so OARD, please. Our website is www.eternallybored.com. Until next time, we're eternally bored,
so you don't have to be. See, he joined us. Yeah. Peace. And Tuxedo is knocked out. See, it worked, man.
Yeah, no. I'm not against that. I'm against the timing. I guess you slept in or something.
No, I woke up way too early, and then had to waking up to an hour, because you don't walk, Reggie, do you?